So I mean, obviously you're pretty structured in your routines, and you have to be, post having like that health crisis, and
Yeah.
I'm aware of health crises as well. So I mean, I definitely commend you for sticking to that. So next thing I want to talk about is kind of like going back to like education for a minute, right? I mean, obviously I think you're a very astute individual. Like you have an abundance of information, and so again, I want to know like, is that information coming way of books? And if they are, what books did you read on your journey to help you get to where you are currently?
You're not going to like this answer. Okay. So, all right. So I actually have written a book and it's called Muting the Megaphone and it's coming out in July of 2022. And this is a very teeny tiny little book. And it's really like, your pocket brand guide. It's really unpacking my method to how to write a brand. So my first book, and it will probably be a first in a number of books that I produce, is really about taking the methodology that I do every day with clients and actually writing it out. Here's are your steps to write your brand. So very tactical. So that's the book that I really produced because I realized that not everybody has the bandwidth to go through an intense process, but maybe this is something that they want to do on their own. They want to start to explore, they want to start to become great at writing their own brands. Maybe it's a creative who wants to learn how to write brands for their clients.
Mhm.
Awesome. Go for it. So that's the book that I am producing. But interestingly enough, I do not read for business.
Hmm.
I have recognized that for me as a learner, just based on my learning style and how fast my brain goes, all the amount of cool business books in the world sometimes create overwhelm
Hmm.
in my mind. And I tend to just feel almost exhausted reading them, like, oh gosh, now I have 75 things I need to implement. That's immediately where my brain goes. So, knowing that about myself, I actually keep reading for pleasure. So I read every night. I often read historical works, autobiographies, great biographies, sometimes historical fiction. That fuels my creative side. What I do in books that have gotten me along the way, I tend to be the person. There's a few friends of mine who read these amazing books. They're obsessed. And then I call them and I go, can you give me the cliff notes? And they're like, yes, here. And I type fast and furiously and I take like a page or two of like cliff notes.
Mhm.
And I get more in that half-hour conversation than I would have reading the entire book. And I know the things that I then need to take away. Often what happens is on the hinges of those conversations, I'll go back and buy the book and then I go through and I highlight. It sounds bizarre, but what I've realized is that when it comes to business books and podcasts, I think you have to know thyself.
Mhm.
How do you consume information? What's the best way? I learn more in a podcast than I do in a book, and I'm totally fine with that.
Mhm. Nice, nice. So it seems like you're more on the audiobook side of things, but I think your methodology is great. I mean, obviously, Cliff Notes kind of give you the high point of view of what someone was trying to get across in the book in the first place. And then to your point, you're then going back and getting the book and doing the highlights. So you're kind of, you got a cheat code, essentially.
Yeah, what's interesting is I think for a lot of us too, as we listen to podcasts or we read books, or there's just a plethora of information out there for us, right? Never before have I ever seen so much that we could consume. I think one of the biggest questions I have to keep reminding myself, and one of my mentors taught me this, is she said, you have to keep asking the question, does this serve me right now?
Mm.
So, like, I have heard some friends talk about these amazing books, right? All these cool things. And I know that I'm just not ready to hear it. And
Mhm.
sometimes you have to trust your gut. And then you know what happens? 6 months later, I'm like, I'm ready. And then I'm totally ready to consume that information and then act on it. Because remember, my tendency is the moment I consume something, I want to do it now.
Mhm.
So if I'm not ready to do it now, don't tell me.
Mhm.
My brain can't handle it.
Mhm.
Some people can read and they're like, I'm going to put a pin on that for 5 years out. That is not me. So
Mhm.
I just have had to learn based on the way that I consume and act on information. I'm really okay going, good concept. Maybe I'm just not ready to do that right now. And I'm okay putting that on the back burner until my business is in a place of readiness or until my personal life calms down or I have the finances, energy, and capacity to tackle X, Y, and Z.